Growing up, I thought my family was as ordinary as they came. My parents, Adam and Laura Reeves, were small-town people. Dad worked as a mechanic, Mom ran a little bakery, and I was just an only child. Our lives felt stable and predictable, like a calendar you flip through, month after month, nothing unusual happening. It wasn't until I was cleaning out the attic last summer, helping my parents get ready to sell the house, that things started to unravel. I found a small, locked metal box shoved deep behind some Christmas decorations. Curiosity got the better of me, so I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside were documents, passport copies, photos, and old IDs. But what I found made my head spin. The names weren't theirs. The passports listed my father as Daniel Archer and my mother as Elena Novak. Their pictures were on the IDs, only much younger. One photo stood out, a grainy black and white image of them standing beside a luxury yacht named the Tempest. A man I didn't recognize stood between them, his arms slung over my father's shoulder like they were old friends. What really gave me chills was a note folded at the bottom of the box. If anyone finds us, run. I spent the next few days combing through every inch of the house, sneaking through drawers and closets while they were at work. I discovered more: encrypted USB drives, old burner phones, and a few letters in a language I couldn't understand, something like Czech or Russian. One envelope held stacks of cash in different currencies, like they were prepared to flee at a moment's notice. I felt sick. Where are my parents criminals? Where are they on the run from someone? The people I thought I knew, the ones who raised me, told me bedtime stories, packed my school lunches, were strangers. The worst part was, I had no idea if they were hiding from the police, or from someone worse. That night, I decided to confront them. I sat down at the kitchen table, laid the passports and pictures in front of them, and watched their faces drop. Mom clutched Dad's arm so tightly her knuckles went white. For a second, they looked scared. "Where did you find these?" Dad asked, his voice low. "I should be asking you the same thing," I shot back. "Who are you?" They exchanged a long glance, one of those silent conversations couples have when words aren't enough. Then Mom leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "We were going to tell you when you were older," she whispered, "but things got complicated." She told me a story I could hardly believe. My parents weren't their real names. They'd been in a witness protection program for the last 20 years. Back in the late 90s, my father had worked as a financial consultant for a wealthy Russian oligarch named Viktor Karpov. Dad discovered Karpov was running a massive money laundering operation through offshore accounts. And when he tried to blow the whistle, things spiraled out of control. They narrowly escaped an assassination attempt and fled to the US, where they started a new life. I wasn't even born yet. The man in the photo, the one with his arm around Dad, was Viktor Karpov. "Why now?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why not tell me sooner?" "We thought it was over," Dad admitted. "The FBI promised Karpov wouldn't find us. But then, we heard rumors that he resurfaced." The room went silent, the weight of their confession pressing down on me like a stone. My parents weren't criminals, they were victims. But if Karpov was back, it meant they weren't safe, and neither was I. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying everything I'd learned. But something still didn't add up. If they were in witness protection, why were they hiding from me? Why not tell me when I was old enough to understand? I decided to dig deeper. Something told me there was more to the story. I hacked into one of the burner phones I'd found. Most of the numbers were disconnected, but one text thread stood out. It was recent. The message was brief, but it made my blood run cold. "Target located. Proceed with extraction." Whoever sent it wasn't referring to Karpov. They were talking about me. The next morning, I confronted my parents again. I showed them the message and demanded the truth. The atmosphere shifted. The fear on their faces deepened, and I could sight the cracks in their story widening. "We didn't tell you everything," Mom said, her voice trembling. "We were trying to protect you." "From what?" I snapped. "What's going on?" Then they dropped the bombshell that shattered everything I thought I knew. "I'm not your biological mother," Mom confessed. "And your father, he isn't who you think he is either." The truth hit me like a freight train. My real mother had been Viktor Karpov's mistress, a woman named Alina. She had tried to escape from Karpov when she found out she was pregnant with me, knowing that if Karpov discovered the baby, he'd never let her leave. My father, Daniel Archer, not Adam Reeves, was hired to smuggle her out of Russia. But things didn't go as planned. Karpov caught wind of the escape attempt, and Alina didn't make it. My father managed to get me out, and he fled to the US with Laura, who helped him disappear. They raised me as their own, never telling me the truth about my origins. They'll stop at nothing to find you, Dad said, his voice grim. Karpov thinks you're his. I felt like I couldn't breathe. All these years I'd been living a lie, and the man hunting us wasn't just some random mobster. He was my father. We don't have much time, Dad continued. Karpov knows you exist now, and he'll come for you. I was furious, heartbroken, and terrified all at once. I wanted to hate them for lying to me, but I couldn't. They weren't perfect. They were just two people trying to save a child from a monster. Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. The strange looks they'd give me when I mentioned Russia, the fear in their eyes whenever I asked about our family history. They'd spent my entire life running from the truth, hoping I'd never have to face it. But now the truth was coming for me, and there was no running from it. The next few days were a blur. My parents packed everything we could carry and burned the rest: bank statements, old photos, anything that could trace us back to our real identities. We changed phone numbers, ditched the old cars, and left town in the middle of the night, driving west toward a safe house set up by one of Dad's old contacts. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be enough. Karpov was relentless, and I was his unfinished business. We reached the safe house just as dawn was breaking. It was a rundown cabin in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forest. For a moment, I thought we were finally safe. Then the gunshots shattered the silence. We barely made it inside before bullets tore through the windows. Dad shoved me to the ground and returned fire, shouting at me to stay down. Mom grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the back door. "We need to split up," Dad shouted. "They're after him." I knew what he meant. They didn't care about my parents. They only wanted me. "Go!" Dad yelled, and I hesitated for only a second before sprinting into the woods with Mom at my side. The sound of gunfire faded as we ran deeper into the forest. My legs burned, and my heart pounded in my chest, but I kept going. There was no turning back now. And then, just as I thought we'd escaped, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking our path. It was Viktor Karpov. He smiled, a cold, predatory grin that made my blood run cold. "Hello, my son," he said, his voice like ice. I don't know how long we stood there, staring at each other. In that moment, everything around me seemed to blur. My parents, the forest, the life I thought I knew. All I knew was this: I wasn't going back with him. "You're not my father," I whispered. Karpov's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he raised his gun. But before he could pull the trigger, a single shot rang out from behind him. Karpov crumpled to the ground, and my father, Adam, Daniel, whoever he was, stood behind. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this story, and share your ideas for future videos. See you in the next video.